Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I was hoping to introduce you to Mrs. MB, but in a moment I'll explain why she's not here. But just before we get on to that, we have many ways of assessing disease severity, disease progression, response to medications. We obviously ask about symptoms, we look for signs, we do investigations, we do biometrics, we can evaluate quite a bit in a fairly logical and scientific way. We also may subject the individual to a quality of life questionnaire to get an idea of how this impacts on their life. But the reality is that none of this really gives us a real insight into how this impacts on a day-to-day basis. Now, Mrs. MB was going to travel with me from Launceston and be here today to be interviewed, but I got a text at 5:30 this morning as I was about to get into the taxi to go to the airport. She was not well. She really didn't feel she could make it. And I know this is true because I saw her 3 days ago when she came to see me and she thought, I'll just come in just as a precaution because I've got a bit of a sore throat, a bit of a runny nose. And I checked her over and I said, look, it's just a virus. I'm sure you'll be fine. I got it very badly wrong. But I do have permission from her to share her story. And in addition to looking after her over the last 5 years or so, we spent a few hours over cups of coffee just chatting about not the medical stuff, not the stuff that we would do during a consultation, but really just talking about her life in general and how this was interwoven with what I'll talk to you about. So she's 64 years old now, but I'm going to take you back to 1996. She was in her mid-40s, busy lady, raising kids, running her own business. Really a very organized, dynamic woman. But then she develops painful toes. And the things what she remembers most about that period was that her toenails were going green and becoming ugly. Now, we don't generally ask patients, what are your toenails like? Are they, what color are your toenails? Now, as you'll see, it is something that would be relevant in this lady. So she sees her GP, and he diagnoses onychomycosis. But he doesn't take nail clippings. And so he treats her for 6 months on an antifungal. And she doesn't get any better. In fact, she gets worse. She's now complaining of increasing lower back pain. She's fatigued. And the term she uses, bone weary. And remember, this is a lady who 6 months, 12 months earlier was dynamic, active. And now she's struggling. And she's desperate. And she's not getting any better from what her GP is able to offer her. She sees a naturopath, a herbalist, and she said, I didn't believe in any of that, but I didn't know what else to do. And of course, not surprisingly, she didn't improve. But there were clues. There were clues to what was going on. She suffered with pretty bad dandruff, and her mum has extensive psoriatic rash. So this really impacted her life in ways that were devastating. So much so that she had to get her husband to help her out of bed each morning. And the thing that she remembers most was this awful fear of the impact this would have on her children. Would her children feel that she was dying? Did her children think she was lazy and just didn't want to get out of bed? And she's counting the considerable cost. She's seeing doctors, she's seeing naturopaths, she's buying pills and potions, and nothing's working for her. Eventually, she seeks a referral. And this is where things change. She sees a specialist, a rheumatologist, and she finds him confident, reassuring, but most importantly, provided her hope. And he did this by means of frank and open discussion. And he gave her a diagnosis that made sense to her. And he discussed the therapeutic options. So remember, we're talking 20 years ago. And she says that she makes a pact with the devil. What does she mean by that? This is what she accepts. And she decides that it's better to be functional now and cop whatever future risk may be involved in taking these medications. And she took lots of them. She took over 20 tablets per day. And this continued for 12 to 15 years. Now, I know this lady very well. And I can assure you that if she was prescribed a medication to be taken in a particular way, she did it. She would have been very adherent to her regime. And she quips that she actually went through menopause 3 times. She went through it naturally, she went through it with withdrawal of HRT, and she actually, an unrelated issue, she was not that long ago diagnosed with breast cancer, so medications related to that. So poor lady has done it tough. And again, the cost, the enormous cost in health, in opportunity, and of course money as well. By now, she has no business anymore. She's given it up. She couldn't keep going. Fast forward to a few years ago when she's offered a biologic agent. And I asked her, how did you feel about this? You know, these agents that are purported to have potentially some nasty adverse effects. And her response was very clear. She said, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. I've been taking all these medications, lots of them, for the last 12 to 15 years, and I still don't really feel great. Yes, I'm better than I was, but things are still not right. Are you worried about it? Were you concerned? She said, absolutely not. She had full faith in her rheumatologist. By now, they'd known each other for over a decade, and the therapeutic alliance that they had established was very strong. She had enormous confidence in her rheumatologist. And she's a very positive person. She did not entertain the option of failure. It was just not on the cards for her, or of drug intolerance. So this probably helps too if you've got a really good positive attitude. So the initial experience was, as she said, so I don't know, there's something missing there, but basically she said, there were no fireworks. She said, well, more of a fizz than a bang. The medication, the new medication was overlapped with her prior medication, so there was a gradual transition across. And she thought it's not too bad, but a real telling moment for her was when she developed a flu-like illness and developed the normal myalgia and arthralgia. And she said, actually, that's the way I used to feel all the time. So this stuff is working. It's pretty good. And in fact, it got better. Currently, she is on no medication other than the Enbrel for her psoriatic arthropathy. She complains of no symptoms and no adverse drug reactions. So I said to her, look, I'm sorry you can't come with me today, but is there anything that you would like me to share with the delegates? And she said, I've got a few things I'd like you to share. I think you're already getting a picture of this lady, a feel for who she is. To healthcare practitioners, be holistic, be thorough and respectful. And when all else fails, read the instructions, listen to your patients. And we as generalists are good at that. We shouldn't be limiting ourselves to a toenail. That's not what we do. We look at the whole patient. We listen to the patient. She also wanted care individualized, and I guess in some respects the new era of biologics is individualization. These highly specific and targeted agents that address, and you hear more about the science around some of the other agents that are coming, but may address just one molecule, one target. And she wanted to know if it could be personalized even more than that. Could the rate of injections be changed depending on how she's feeling? To fellow sufferers of psoriatic arthropathy, don't hesitate. For her, it's been life-changing. Very confident and very positive about it. And to the regulators, a predictable and understandable response, make it easier for us to get it, and let us start earlier. And I think you'll hear from subsequent talks that it is actually happening. The idea is of earlier intervention, of modifying the disease early rather than late, is finally taking shape. There are challenges, of course, but hopefully this is going to happen. And we as GPs need to know more about this, need to be more involved, because they are coming our way. Thank you.